I actually completely gave up paid employment to pursue my business. And my dad said, no, you're not going to do art. You won't make any money from art. You are going to do something that's more academic. So I ended up doing chemistry, which I was rubbish at. Yes, it didn't work out the way I would have wanted it to work out, but I've done it. I've learned from it, and if I hadn't done it, I'd be saying, oh, but what if? Would I do it again? Other stuff that I'm doing, yes, it might be paying the bills, but it's not actually, it's not doing that for me. And I think as you get older, you kind of reassess things.
Hello and welcome to Get a Shift On, your podcast all about career change and career transition. This week, I'm delighted to welcome Andrea Clare, who contacted me on LinkedIn and has an amazing career story herself, but has ultimately ended up helping women through menopause through creativity. Andrea, welcome and thank you for coming on the show.
Hello, David. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Now, we were talking, I know, just before I hit record about your life story, as it were. Do you want to just repeat for everybody who's listening and watching where it all began and how you've got to where you are today?
Okay, so I'll try and remember it all. Hopefully the brain fog won't kick in. So I grew up in Suffolk and I qualified at quite a young age to be a lecturer in further education. But then I moved up to Scotland almost immediately, and I went in a slightly different direction in that I went into the corporate world and I was in IT, training people to use systems, also creating training courses for other people to run. And I got involved in all sorts of exciting projects, many of which were business critical. And on the whole, I really enjoyed what I did. But having been a very creative child, I wasn't doing really what I really, really enjoyed. And I'll come to that in a minute. So I was made redundant in 2011 after I'd been in the corporate world for over 20 years. And I did what I'd always wanted to do. And I know a lot of people have this as a dream, and that was to own a cafe. I'd always wanted to have a cafe, preferably one that was in a nice touristy spot. But I ended up with a cafe in my local town. It was really hard work. And unfortunately, due to various reasons, one of which was a recession, I actually lost my business. And I went through the horrors of bankruptcy. And I was also probably in the throes of perimenopause at that point, but I didn't know. But I then became a full-time mum, which I really enjoyed. And I've had a couple of sort of transformative moments in my life, which have led me to where I am now. So in the middle of lockdown, I discovered a short online course. Well, it wasn't even a course, it was just a session where a local business owner who designs textiles, she was showing women how to paint a flower using watercolours. And I thought, well, I might give that a go because I'd been very creative as a child. My mum had taught me all the crafts, knitting, making, embroidery, baking cakes. And I'd always been a bit of a sketcher. I used to love drawing, but I'd never used watercolours. But I thought, I know I've got a palette somewhere that was my mum's. I'm going to give it a go. So I painted this flower and it looked decent. So I thought, I'm going to paint a dog because I'd historically pencil sketched dogs from a very young age because we'd always had dogs. And I did this dog and I thought, well, actually, it looks okay. But I still didn't believe that it was good enough, that is such a theme throughout my life. And I know it's a theme for a lot of people. Anyway, I didn't paint again. And then it was in lockdown, actually. I'd been having a horrendous time in terms of my physical health and my mental health. I'd previously been to the doctors and just been told, oh, you've got depression. But I had all sorts going on. I thought I had early onset dementia. I thought I was bipolar because my mood swings were so dramatic. I basically thought I was going crazy. And then I saw the first Davina McCall documentary about menopause, and it all kind of slotted into place. I thought, actually, I'm normal. I'm not the only one that's feeling this way. And I really want to help other women so that they don't go through what I've been through. And that was like, well, I'd been through it 10 years ago when we weren't really talking about menopause, let alone perimenopause. Anyway, in 2022 is a really significant year for me. So I was 57. I saw in a Facebook group that somebody's dog was really, really ill, and she was looking for someone to photograph it, give it like a spa day. And I thought, I really need to paint that dog. So I painted it. And I gifted the portrait to the lady who's now a friend. And I just put a message in the group, said, look, would anybody else like their pet painted? And here we are in 2025, and I've painted over 100 pets for people. So I started my pet portrait business. I actually came to realize that, yeah, I've got some sort of talent here. I don't know how it happens, but it does. And I then discovered a creative business coach. And I said to her, look, I really want to create art, but I'm realistic in my expectations that it's quite unusual for women to, or any artist to have a really lucrative career. And I also want to help women. So came up with the idea of combining the two. So now, a menopause coach. I'm just about to fully qualify as one. I'm a menopause coach, but I use creativity to help women understand and navigate their menopause and how to thrive in midlife. And I'm just rebranding, and I'm going to be called the Creative Paws Coach. So I discovered a way to do what I love, but also to do another thing that I love, which is helping other people. But because of my personal circumstances, I being the solitary breadwinner, my home, I got back into not training, but I was doing event management in a local medical college. And I've been doing that for just over 2 years. And then on Friday there, I actually completely gave up paid employment to pursue my business. I'm in the process of organising a huge menopause event that's going to be in Glasgow on the 25th of October. I founded it myself. I'm doing it all myself, actually. Brought together an amazing group of speakers. And yeah, I'm able to fully focus on that. It's called the Scottish Paws Summit, by the way. And also pursue my business, which, as I say, is helping women who are going through midlife, but using creativity in the process, because there's so much benefit to be derived from taking time out and just getting creative. So I think that pretty much covers the 60 years.
Wow, what a fantastic 60 years and so much excitement still to come and still happening. And actually, I was
Yeah.
watching then, and your face absolutely lights up when you talk about quitting the kind of the day job that you've been doing and doing your own thing and building your own business. It's so exciting and nice for me to see how happy that makes you. And there's so much I want to touch on. And I know we spoke obviously before we hit record, so there's still a few things that I want to touch on. I want to start right back at the beginning. You said you're a very creative child.
Mm.
And when we spoke off camera, you said that you were dissuaded by your
Mhm.
parents from pursuing that dream and that hope. Just talk to me a little bit about that and how that felt, and then how that's progressed as you've gone through your life and now obviously started a very creative business, including the drawing of the dogs.
So when I was at school, which obviously school was very different in those days, I used to enjoy art. I'd always been, you know, sketching and, having fun with paint and color. I enjoyed art at school, although I don't think my art was always rated as being the best, because I kind of used to do my own thing to a certain extent. And then when it came to O levels, I was quite academic. I was a bit of a conundrum, really, because I was very creative, but I was also really good at the likes of maths and modern language. And my dad said, no, 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 you're not going to do art. You won't make any money from art. You are going to do something that's more academic. So I ended up doing chemistry, which I was rubbish at. And I have derived no benefit from it and throughout my life. So, I was channeled down that route, and exams for me weren't an easy thing. And, another thing I discovered in 2022 is I have ADHD, and that is very common amongst creative people. But no, there was this thing, no, you're not going to make any money from art. And actually, it's quite sad to talk about this. I mean, both my parents are no longer with us, but my mum and I used to do creative stuff together when my dad was at work. And we had to have it all cleared away before my dad got home from work because he hated the fact that my mum was encouraging me to be creative. But it brought me so much joy. So yeah, and you know, if I was now, at school and creative in the way that I am, I know that I would probably go down the graphic design route. But when I was at school, the only thing really that was associated with art was being an artist. Whereas now there's so many other opportunities.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think it's so interesting to understand how those opportunities have changed and really how the thoughts have changed around what's possible as we move forward through our life. Because you are certainly not alone in having those skills suppressed at a young age. I think that's very common for that generation, for the older generation.
Mm.
And I think some of that's moved down to my generation as well. So I'm a parent. And I try not to suppress those skills in my children. But I know plenty of people do because there's still that thought that
Hmm.
you will never make any money from it. Oh, that's not possible because it doesn't fit into that traditional career scope. And when I talk to my
Hmm.
clients, I always start with that skills bit because just like yourself, there are so many people who have them suppressed at a young age. They fall into a job or a career like you did and you get 20, 30 years down the line and you think, this isn't quite right. This is not where I want to be or what I want to be doing. So then to find and express yourself in that way is so exciting to see. And I just
Mm.
love hearing when people have had that opportunity. And super sad that your parents are no longer with us. Do you think they would be happy though in seeing how much you've used it and what joy you're bringing to other people as well?
I know my mum would be because obviously she was herself creative. I think, it was a generational thing, as you say. I think, yeah. I mean, as I say, I never truly believed that I was any good at art. But I have actually done 4 art trails, where they have these big animals that you paint. And I actually was involved with a project. Was it in 2022? I can't remember. It's all a bit of a blur that time because it was the lockdown era.
Yeah.
But I was involved with this project called The World Reimagined, and it was all about reframing how we think about the slave trade. And there was there was 100 globes that were painted and displayed in different parts of the UK. And I was chosen to do one, which, I was so honoured to do that. And, this is I'm not going off at a tangent because this does link in with what you were asking me there. My globe was actually in the grounds of Westminster Abbey for the
Oh,
launch. And it
wow.
also ended up for the weekend, it was in Trafalgar Square. And I'm feeling a little bit emotional actually talking about it because I did actually think when I was there, because it was such a magical day when I flew down to London and saw my globe there with all the other globes. I thought, I think my dad would have actually acknowledged this and been super proud because, it is a big achievement, but even then I still didn't think I was any good at art, which is the irony. So yeah, I think he would have been proud, but I think my mum more so.
I was just saying how difficult it is to understand and assume what our parents may have thought or what they would think. My dad died in 2009, so I fully appreciate how hard that is. But what a lovely stage to have your artwork displayed in. Do you have some pictures that I can put up so my viewers can see that amazing where they are at Westminster Abbey, which holds quite a
Yeah.
dear place for me, and indeed Trafalgar Square. What a great setting for your artwork.
I know. I mean, I was so very proud. It was truly, as I say, magical. And when my globe was in Trafalgar Square, it just brought back memories of my mum and I. We came down on the train and we went to the National Gallery, which is right on Trafalgar Square. And I thought, gosh, how ironic that, so many years later, I'm here with my art. I've got very fond memories of London anyway, the time I've spent there. And so I'm so very lucky that I had that opportunity. And, I think that was another life-changing moment for me. It made me realize that, this thing, it brings me so much joy. And, other stuff that I'm doing, yes, it might be paying the bills, but it's not actually, it's not doing that for me. And I think as you get older, you kind of reassess things. Certainly, when I speak to women about the menopause, it is a huge time of change, and it's a time of reflection. And if you've got the opportunity to make it, to do something different, then I would encourage you to do so, because, you know, I, I want to inspire other people that it's never too late to make a change.
Absolutely.
Like you say, I'm still full of enthusiasm for life and, for what I do. So yeah, I would, encourage people to reevaluate things and actually think, is this bringing me joy? Is this what I want to be doing for the rest of my life? Because you don't want to look back and have regrets.
Absolutely. And like, so good to hear that. And it's something I talk about quite a lot. So it's always nice when that is reiterated from someone else. Do you think you could have ever imagined yourself 20, 30 years ago, if you're looking forward to now, doing what you're doing now, setting up the Paws Summit, the artwork you're doing and the work you're doing with women and menopause?
No, absolutely not. I've never been a planner. I've always been very spontaneous. And, that's partly due to the way in which I was brought up. I just wanted to break free in a way. And also I know it's related to my neurodiversity. But the strange thing is, when I was very young, I just had this sense that I was going to do something that would have a big impact, that would help people. My life experience would in some way help other people. And as I said, I was very young when I had that, but I had no clue. Absolutely no clue. And I suppose, my career, I have had an impact on a lot of lives, helping people get to grips with IT. But this is a whole different thing. This is me. This is, for the first time in my life, I am 100% me. And I mean, I'm not as colourful as I normally am, but I love colour. And I've spent too many years in black and navy in the corporate world. I just want to wear colour.
And isn't it interesting that you are so confined by that corporate world? I come from a similar sort of background in some ways, and I understand you get almost suppressed by that structure. You wear what you have to wear because that's the seen thing, the done thing. So to be able to get out there and express yourself as you are, and I think you look perfectly colourful, by the way. I think,
Thank
I'd
you.
look forward to seeing more colour. But it's great. It's just, and your personality and everything is coming through. And I think that's so
Yeah.
important. Looking at how you help women with menopause, can you just talk briefly and explain the difference between menopause, perimenopause, and the effect that it actually has on women, and then how you are helping them through it?
Okay, so I mean, this is really important, not just for women here, but also for the people, for the males in their life, because um, menopause, which is kind of used as a blanket term, it affects 51% of the population, i.e., the females in the population, but it also impacts upon the men as well. Menopause, as I say, it's used as a blanket term, but you've got different stages. So you've got premenopause, is kind of when hormones start changing in your body. The levels start to fluctuate, and you might start to notice some physical and potentially emotional changes. But then when perimenopause kicks in, that is on average age 45, mid 40s. That is when your hormones are just all over the place. Just progesterone and estrogen, those are the two main hormones, fluctuating and not necessarily in decline, but there's this huge gap that builds up between the two. And that's when all of the, I was going to say when all the magic happens, but it's actually, it's when all the challenges happen or can happen for women. 25% of women experience nothing. 50% have they're in the middle, and then 15% of women have it really bad. Now, I'm not sure if I was in the bad category or if I was in the middle, but I know that I had lots of stuff going on. So that can last between 5 and 10 years. And then once you no longer menstruate, that is when you are deemed to be, and you need to have not menstruated for 12 months, you are deemed to be menopausal. But menopause actually only lasts for 24 hours, because then you flip into what's called post-menopause. That's where I am. And just because you're postmenopausal doesn't mean that you aren't still experiencing some of the things that you experience in perimenopause, but it just means that your hormone levels are stable. But they never get back to where they were pre-perimenopause. That's it, and that's the thing that a lot of people don't, or a lot of women don't appreciate. Even if you've not experienced any of the challenges that perimenopause can bring, your hormones are still lower than they were when you were younger. And as a result, you are going to potentially experience other things in terms of your bones, your muscle depletion. There can be an impact upon your cardiac health. So, it is a massive change that is happening in the female body. And what I say to women is, you don't have to be an expert, but you need to be aware of what's going on and understand what's going on in your body. And I've got like a checklist that people can complete and, be informed, so that if you then decide, right, I'm going to go and speak to my doctor or my nurse practitioner about HRT, for instance, you are knowledgeable. And that's what I did after I saw the first Serena McCall documentary. We have to take responsibility for our bodies and, be knowledgeable. I knew nothing. I was so ignorant. But, in those days, as I say, we weren't talking about it. Now we're talking about it. There's so much information out there. But, women have got busy lives. And that's, one of the reasons I designed the Scottish Paws Summit, is so that women can take time out for themselves and actually, learn some important stuff and adopt some easy strategies to make life easier for themselves. And, so for instance, I don't know where your lovely wife is in terms of age, but, men need to appreciate that when their wife or partner is having these incredible rages, which is what I went through, or these huge mood swings, that this is why. It's because of the hormones, So yeah, it's so important that we are aware of what's going on. And it's unfortunate that, women don't get this education. We get education at the start of puberty, we get education when you're pregnant, you get support, but you're kind of left as you get older. And the thing is, historically, 100 years ago, women on average lived to their early 50s. So, this wasn't such a big issue. But now we're living almost half our life in one of the menopausal states. So we want to live our lives and thrive,
And that's so important on so many levels. I'm kind of Sam. I won't say too much because my wife is just through the other side of the door and she might come in and kill me. But I am in a unfortunate situation that I'm sandwiched between the end and the beginning. I have teenage daughters and my wife is early 40s. So I am
Good luck.
sandwiched and dealing with all of that. I have 3 girls. So my son and I will be moving to the garden shed very soon. Do you think that there is still some stigma around menopause and the effect it has on women and indeed the men in their lives as well?
Yeah, not every woman is comfortable about talking about it as I am. There's certain cultures that don't even recognize it or acknowledge it. I think we're getting better, and I think the generation below where I am they're more open about it. Certainly my generation is still a little bit more, people aren't quite as comfortable talking about it. There should be no embarrassment surrounding it because it's just nature, and Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I speak to lots of different women about this, and the levels of knowledge do differ greatly. And the ability to talk about it openly is also very different. But there's more and more support groups popping up where women can go in and just chat because it makes such a difference to talk about it. It's like any problem. If you can sit down and talk to somebody about it who's either been through it or is going through it, it just makes such a difference.
Doesn't it ever? And that's why I do what I do, because I just want to be able to speak to people and share my experiences, share amazing experiences from people like yourself. Because when you put it out there, when you put it in the open, it just makes it so much easier to share
Mm.
and understand. I come from a healthcare background, so I have never particularly minded sharing and talking about, I guess, fairly intimate subjects, but I know some people do. So I think it's what you're doing is amazing work, because I think opening it up, like we say, to share that information is so much easier. And the summit, I'm sure, will be such a great event. Talk to me a little bit about it, what it is, how long it is, where it is. As you know, I will put some links in for people because I'm sure, some people will want to come along.
Yeah. So obviously it's in Scotland, but if people want to come over the border to it, they'd be very, very welcome. So it is a full day event and it's taking place right in the centre of Glasgow. I've picked a beautiful venue, which is all light and bright and colourful, just like me, and at the side of a central station, which is the main station in Glasgow. And it is a host of very knowledgeable presenters. They're all female, they're all based in Scotland, which was really important to have that, not to be flying people up from down south. It was all about Scottish based experts. It's not just going to be sitting there listening to presentations and death by bullet point because that's not my style. I know how to,
Nobody
design
wants
a
that.
course. Design a course that's actually, people enjoy. So we're going to be having speakers, we're going to be having interviews, we're going to be having workshops. We're going to be speaking about lifestyle choices or lifestyle changes that you can make, which will help um, you in midlife. So interestingly, it's actually the topic for Menopause Day, which is on the 18th of October. And yeah, I'm really excited for it. We're going to be talking about things like nutrition, gut health, exercise, mindset, the importance of mindfulness, pelvic health. I mean, there's a whole host of things we're talking about. It's a holistic approach to menopause. Obviously, we're going to be touching on HRT, we're talking about hormones. But the way I've designed it is that it's going to be a really welcoming environment and a relaxed environment. There'll be the opportunity to ask questions, the opportunity to speak to the experts during the day. We've got a small number of exhibitors and yeah, it's fully catered as well. So it's going to be a really empowering day.
That sounds so exciting. And I know it will be such a good success. And I think people need to have that intimate space to be able to talk with those
Yeah.
experts that you're talking about. So thanks.
Yeah.
I wish you all the very best with
Thank
that.
you.
I want to take you back to something kind of back to where you were talking about having your own cafe, because I think that ties in with where you are now. Because obviously you went through some issues with that and you talked about it, you talked about bankruptcy. How did you get yourself over what was obviously a very difficult time and to find the positivity in it?
That's another interesting question because I look back and when I describe that time of going through bankruptcy, which, you hear about these celebrities going through repeat bankruptcies. And for me, it was horrendous because I went from being successful in the corporate world to, I describe myself as feeling that big when I went bankrupt. I just felt like I completely lost myself. I'd lost respect for myself. I'd lost any sort of, I can't remember the word that I'm trying to grapple with here, but I had a good reputation and I felt I'd lost all of that. But what I didn't appreciate at the same time, I was going through perimenopause, which, that can be associated with a loss of confidence and, loss of, gosh, what's the word? Oh my goodness, I'm having really bad brain fog. This is how it gets you.
That's
loss
okay.
of identity. I don't know if I said that already. So yeah, I mean, but I do take positives from the whole experience, because the positive is that, I've tried, I've done it. Yes, it didn't work out the way I would have wanted it to work out, but I've done it. I've learned from it, and if I hadn't done it, I'd be saying, oh, but what if? Would I do it again? If I was to have a cafe again, I'd want the idea of the perfect cafe would be like a little touristy one somewhere where I could bake scones and cakes for people. I met lots of great people locally. So yeah, I take lots of positives from it. Um, it was a huge learning curve, and I'm still on a huge learning curve, and I love learning. So that doesn't, that's not an issue for me. It's also enabled me to give other people advice as well and say, this idealized picture you may have of owning a cafe. Well, let me tell you about the hard work and the staff issues and, all the other things associated with having a bricks and mortar business. So yeah, as I say, lots of sadness associated with it, but equally lots of positives.
And so important to be able to share that reality and for people to understand, yes, we all have these dreams, these hopes, what we think would be a great business or a great idea. It doesn't always shape up to be as good, but it's so good. And I'm glad to hear that you have learned from it and are able to share that experience. And also, you enjoy helping people and enjoy sharing
Mhm.
your experiences. So, moving forward, post summit, you are going to incorporate your creativity, your artwork into helping women through menopause. How are you going to be doing that? What does that look like?
So I've got an online program which I'm going to be offering. I'm just in the process of rebranding it and revamping it a wee bit. So during that program, I support women and help them learn about menopause and what's going on in their body. I'm just in the process of qualifying as a menopause coach. And we also use creativity to do that, whether it be from a very basic diagram. We use, I call it the body scan. It's not a fancy machine, but we use that and have a bit of fun with that. We use art to express our emotions, and then we also create art together. So we create some canvas art together, and we also, learn a little bit about a lot art along the way as well. We learn about mandalas because that's one of the things that we create together. So yeah, it's about not just empowering women with information, but it's also enabling them to take some time out for themselves to get creative. It's not about the quality of what you create, it's about the process.
Which is really a big chunk of people moving forward and understanding
Hmm.
what's happening, I guess, with their bodies as well. Do you think that women going through menopause, you said earlier that 100 years ago, women lived to kind of early 50s. So we know
Hmm.
that life expectancy is a lot longer than that. Not only that, but our working lives are increasing by, well, who knows at the minute, it might change in the coming months and weeks, but ultimately we are going to be working until we are 70 plus, probably. Do you think that menopause, therefore, has an effect on women and their working lives?
Well, I mean, definitely companies now are introducing menopause policies because, I know of instances of women who've had to give up work because of the menopause. And that is really, really sad to hear that. Because it, like you've witnessed it here with me. I'm postmenopausal, but I still have phases where I'm grappling for words, and that can be really embarrassing for women. Can also be really frightening as well. If you're in an important meeting, for instance, and you experience that, or if you're in a meeting and you're going through a hot flush, that can be embarrassing. It doesn't embarrass me. I just, say menopause. And, women losing confidence. And, if you're experiencing physical symptoms and it's mean you're having to take time off work, it's not a disability, but it is a reality. And, companies are, um, becoming more aware of this. Yeah, and especially, I mean, I was talking to somebody, a chief exec of the Scottish Ambulance Force, and he was saying, we've got more and more women that are becoming paramedics. So we need to, accommodate that and offer appropriate support to them. So it's not just about education educating the women who are going through the menopause, but is also educating their colleagues as well.
Move on. What if you cut off? Don't worry, we'll just work it out. But what I want
Okay.
to ask you then, following on from that, is what advice, top 3 tips, if you will, would you give to
Okay.
women in the workplace going through menopause and feeling all of those worries and embarrassments maybe that you've just described?
So I would say my top tip is to, and I've already mentioned this, is empower yourself with information. Find out what is going on. If you can, go along to a local support group, great. If you're in Scotland, near Glasgow, obviously come along to the Scottish Paws Summit. But, find out what's going on. Don't assume that somebody's going to sort it all out for you or there's a magic pill, because there isn't. I would say try not to be embarrassed, and use the knowledge that you've got to educate other people as well, that that you're working with. I would say as well, look at lifestyle changes that you can implement. There's some really easy things you can do. So in terms of like sleep quality, that can have a huge impact upon you in the workplace. So one of the things that I did, it was about a year and a half ago, that I was advised to do was don't have your mobile phone in your bedroom, and I don't have caffeine after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And that has made a huge difference to the quality of my sleep. Because unfortunately, mobile phones rule our life. And if you're scrolling on that just before you go to bed, your brain is just still so active that you can't possibly drop off to sleep. And then if you wake up in the night, the temptation is always to go back on your phone. So charge it outside your room. Things like your exercise, focusing on weight bearing exercise. I'm not talking about building huge muscles, but, for stability, in as you go through life. And, that is really important to stay strong. And then also looking at your diet. And I'm not talking about being on a strict diet, but I'm talking about increasing the amount of protein that you're eating, because that will help with your muscle mass. And, cutting down on alcohol, dare I say it. I mean, I very rarely drink alcohol now because it makes me feel so unwell. And it's proven that our body doesn't react to it the same way it did when we were younger because of the hormone changes. And, I mean, it can sound boring, but, eating fruit and veg and staying hydrated. I drink way more water than I've ever done, and taking time out for you. So those are kind of, I don't know if that's my top 3. I've got so many tips that I can share, but
Oh, just
yeah, I would say that. And also I would say, if you're not happy where you're working and you're not getting appropriate support, then maybe it is time to, change. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being honest with yourself and thinking, actually, no, this is not serving me anymore. I want to, do something completely different, because it is your life after all.
absolutely. And thank you, because you're an absolute testament to that. You have changed. You are clearly doing something that gives you such joy and such purpose. And as I said earlier, it shows all over your face and in the way you come across. And I wish you all the very best with the summit. I look forward to seeing what comes from it. I look forward to the next
Thank
one
you.
down in England. I will absolutely rave about it. And I look forward to seeing the speakers, because I obviously know Becky as well. And I think that would be just so fantastic for you. I know your battery is running out, so I will say thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you. And I think what you are doing is so important and so vital. And I will share all the links. Please send me some pictures of your artwork as well. Uh,
Oh,
and, as a fellow dog owner, I love a good portrait of a dog. So thank you. And I wish you all the very best moving forward with everything that you're doing.
thank you so much, David. It's just lovely to receive your encouragement and your support.
And it is really heartfelt and genuine. And thank you so much. And I wish you absolutely all the best with everything you're doing moving forward.
Thank you. And to you too.
Take care.
Okay, thank you.